Or somebody with 3 hands. Right?
Get it all the way in. Move it forward.
What for?
This base.
Oh.
Or get out of the way.
I normally
There we
do
go.
the top part first because I'm not tall enough to pull it all the way up. But maybe
You hold that.
Okay. It's gotta be.
That it?
Is that it? I can't see it.
Yeah, that looks like it.
Gotta do this part first and then stick it on the bottom. That's what works, I think, better. There we go. You can hold it up.
When you get it into peg it. Push it all the way in. Yeah, there's more. Push it down. There we go. There we go.
Good. That does it. Thanks. Okay, all good.
Stand up. There. Okay. Wow.
Got it. All right, tables.
I think that's gonna survive a lot more deployments.
It up a little bit there, but that's okay. That's still good. All right, last few chairs, we'll take this.
Do you need anything? Good. Have a great night. Thanks, you too.
That's a So you tested out telecom over this? He is in, he's going to be conferencing in from Utah. Maybe leave this space open actually, so people can get through here once we set the tables up. Yeah, let's put the tables out.
Yeah, let's get the tables real quick and then we're good. No, are you just using these? Let's just
Right.
use them.
Okay.
Easier.
Now it falls. A nut came off.
Oh, well.
Rachel.
Don't worry about that.
Where did that come from?
All right, let's get.
Oh, off of the card somewhere.
I see that somewhere. Came up around here.
So we get them off on this side then.
Oh, right.
You get it?
two and two tables then?
I like 2 tables.
Did we have three last time?
Yeah, 3 maybe. right?
He's the man in the sky.
Yeah. No questions tonight?
Yeah, it was on.
Come on, Strongtown.
It's not quite 7, but I must say I'm struggling tonight because I'm so used to having the library clock here. And in our new configuration of their meeting room, which is lovely, I'm ready to donate a clock to them to put back there. But we'll get started here in just a minute.
Just like fly by the seat of my pants, authentic. Oh, that's okay. Yeah, no, I figured somebody beat me to it. Because there's a string in the business council statute. So I'm like,
All right, officially now, good evening. Welcome to the Albany County Public Library. My name is Rachel Crocker and I am the director here at the Public Library, and it is a privilege every year to get to do these. Are we on number 4? I have already lost count, but we, our 4th of these tonight with our House District candidates. Public libraries from their invention have been about connecting people with information. That's what we do. And information comes in all shapes, sizes, and forms. But one of those, and ironically, increasingly in our digital age, I think one of our most important parts of information is our face-to-face contact with people hearing directly from folks. And so I think this is just a great privilege to get to host these for our community. As a reminder, we are, in addition to the folks here in the room, we are live streaming this, and those recordings will also be available online for people to view at a later time. We are also doing, so this is a new system, it has a learning curve. We're getting there. So thank you for your patience. This is going to be, we've done many a test, but this is our first live run at having someone also zoom in. So bear with us if we need to make some adjustments here or there, but we're glad that we can be able to do that too. So with those caveats in mind, thank you all for joining us. Candidates, thank you for joining us and for running and what you're doing. And I'm going to hand it over to the League of Women Voters.
Thank you to the library. And their wonderful new meeting room here. I am Matthew Link, President of the League of Women Voters of Laramie. We are a staunchly nonpartisan organization specializing in voting and elections. And we're dedicated to educating and empowering voters. And as you can see, I'm a man. We want to invite any men or women 18 or older to join us. You can learn more about us on our table in the back there. And on the other table in the back, right in the corner, we have a table dedicated to candidate materials. We've invited any candidates coming to our forums to put materials there, so if you want to learn more about them, check that table out. Okay, let's start with a Laramie forum tradition. I think I'm already too close to the mic. Let's start with a forum tradition here. Anybody in the audience who is an elected official or running for office who would like to let everyone know about it, please just stand up and give your name, and the office you are currently in or running for. And let's start on this side of the room and then do the other side.
All right, I'm Brett Ralston. I'm running for City Council in Ward 3.
Thad Hoff, Albany County Commission.
Sally King, your current county coroner and running for re-election.
Eric Henderson, Ward 1, Laramie City Council.
My turn. Klaus Halsgut, running for Albany County Commissioner.
All right, well, thank you everyone for having the guts to run for office. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the format of the forum tonight. Each candidate on our panel will have questions posed to them by our moderator, and each candidate will be given the same amount of time to respond, generally 90 seconds. And we have some timekeepers here to help you manage your time effectively and show them the most important sign, Jamie. Yes, the stop sign. If you see red, that means you have precious little time to stop before a moderator potentially cuts you off. And for our remote member of the panel here, we'll be bringing up those stop signs when Ken is posed questions here. We'll try to, this will be a new thing for us, so bear with us. Okay, let's see here. So we'll begin tonight with some questions curated by the league, and that probably won't last long because I already see a lot of people with questions here. And then we'll transition to the staple of our Laramie forums here, which is audience participation. On your seats next to you, you'll see cards and pens, and just feel free to write down any questions you might have for our candidates. But let me give you some tips for getting your questions asked, because at all of our well-attended forums so far, we've had far more questions than we could possibly answer all of them. So here's a few tips. Please direct your questions to a given office, in this case, the House districts, not any one specific candidate. And please refrain from personal attacks in your questions. And finally, try not to wait until the last 5 or 10 minutes of the forum to throw your hand up and get a question pulled up, because it's unlikely to get asked if we have a big glut of unasked questions already. Okay, and we're giving our moderator discretion to edit questions for clarity and appropriateness and pose any follow-up questions to expand on an issue. Oh, and generally 90 seconds, but we're giving our moderator discretion for time constraints or simple questions. Maybe she could change the response time to 30 seconds or 60 seconds. It's all up to her. Okay. Now, a couple technical considerations for our forum here. Let's start with the most important ritual of the evening. I'm just taking my phone out and setting it to off. All right, excellent. And to our candidates and moderator, please speak clearly into the microphone. This isn't just for the audio in our audience, but we want to pick up good quality audio for our video recordings. And speaking of recordings, as Rachel mentioned, full recordings of the forum will be available for viewing through the library website and Laramie Public Access Channel 191. And finally, please don't record during the forum. All forum content is the property of the League of Women Voters of Laramie and the Albany County Public Library. And more importantly, you might get in trouble with the FCC, which requires that all forums be broadcast in their entirety. Okay, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on office information tonight because they're all House districts. If you want to learn more about the office, we have some material on the table in the back there describing exactly what an elected Wyoming House member does. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about, finally that table with the red stuff in the back there, we have some sample ballots for anyone interested in really getting ready to figure out how and where they're gonna vote. We have some materials back there. Okay, let's talk about our moderator. Our moderator this evening is Ann Alexander. She is currently interim provost and vice president of academic affairs at UW, and occasionally professor of economics. Her professional interests include the history of American capitalism, international finance, and health economics. Ann's lived and worked in Wyoming for over 3 decades, and she loves to hike here. She has moderated for us quite a few times in the past, and we're happy to welcome her back. Let's give it up for Anne.
All right, I am not turning off my phone because I need a clock in front of me. So welcome, thank you to the League of Women Voters and to Albany County Public Library for hosting us. Thank you all for coming to interview these folks for the jobs of House District Representatives in Albany County. And before we begin asking our candidates to introduce themselves and the office they're running for and party affiliation, I'd like to introduce Nancy Lockwood for the reading of a candidate statement for one of our candidates who is unable to attend this evening.
Thank you, Ann. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Emily's study is, what? Closer? Closer. There? Good? Good distance. Emily's study is a candidate for House District 14 in the Republican Party, and she provided us a statement to read tonight on her behalf. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting tonight's candidate forum and for providing voters with opportunities to learn more about the candidates. Unfortunately, due to a prior commitment, I am unable to attend this evening. I sincerely regret missing the opportunity to meet with everyone in person and answer your questions. My campaign is built on listening to the people of House District 14 and serving with integrity, transparency, and common sense. As a veteran service officer and longtime public servant, I have spent my career helping Wyoming families navigate difficult challenges, and I hope to bring that same commitment to the Wyoming legislature. I encourage you to continue asking thoughtful questions of every candidate and to stay engaged throughout this election. If you would like to learn more about me or share your thoughts and concerns, I would be honored to hear from you through my campaign Facebook page or website. Thank you again for your time, and I hope to have the opportunity to meet with many of you soon. Emily Study.
Right. Okay, so we have a lot of questions from you all, and I did the math, and given the 90-second response time, there's probably probably a lot of these questions aren't going to make it, not because they're not good questions, but because we have to be out of here at 8:30. So probably we'll be able to get to around 7, maybe 8 questions if you all are very judicious and economical with your time. So I will begin by asking, well, one thing to note, which perhaps was already noted and I was staring at the questions, I will rotate the order of your answers, so I will ask Mr. Wilkin to go first, and then Mr. Wright will go next, next, and so on down the line until we get to Mr. Chestick, and then he will go first, and we'll see how long that lasts. Let me ask the candidates to introduce yourself, the office you are running for, and your party affiliation. 30 seconds, max. If it takes you longer than that to say your name, I'll give you a little grace.
I'm Gary Wilkin, and I'm a Democrat, and I'm running for representative of House District 46 to represent people from all natures, religions, races. I have a background in both as a pastor and a police officer and a code enforcement officer, and have served in your county for almost 30 years now.
Hi, I'm Cam Wright. Everybody hear this okay? Great. So I have spent 30 years in the military before I came to Wyoming about almost 24 years ago. I have taught students engineering here in Wyoming for that amount of time. I just retired from the University of Wyoming as a professor. I spent about 6 years as the Dean of Engineering here, and I have been impressed by the people of District 46. I'm a Republican running for House District 46, and stop.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ross Davenport. I'm running for House District 45. I'm a Republican. A little bit about me. I've been in engineering since I started working. I started working at a gravel company doing geotechnical work, and now I'm a stormwater specialist. So my background is definitely engineering, so I'll look at this whole thing from a different approach. So that's about me.
Good evening, I'm Carly Provenza. I am running for House District 45, which is from 15th Street to the river in Laramie. I am running on behalf of the people, not a party, but I am on the ticket as a Democrat. And my background is in grassroots organizing and helping coach nonprofits to help grow grassroots power so we can ensure that power is inherent in the people.
Good evening, I'm Trey Sherwood. I'm running for House District 14, which is in the northern part of the city of Laramie and all of Albany, northern Albany County. I wanted to say thank you guys for being here tonight because your choices were carnival, street dance, rodeo, and you are all very civically minded and came here to hear us talk and hopefully be in conversation with you. My background is in nonprofit work, in community development, and small business coaching.
My turn?
Yes,
my name, yeah. Thanks. My name is Ken Chestek, and thank you for allowing me to participate by Zoom. I would really prefer to be there in person with you. And now that I see the room, I really wish I were there in person because I don't like the image of me hovering over you from behind on this giant screen. But I am currently representing House District 13, and all of you are in House District 13 right now. I'm not, because I'm traveling. I'm at a convention in Salt Lake City learning about other issues. Okay. Thank you. I'm a Democrat running for House District 13. Thank you.
All right. We'll begin with our questions, and I will again start with Mr. Wilkin because that was an introduction. So all of you will answer the same question, and you have 90 seconds. So to begin, many legislators decry the loss of young people from Wyoming. Why is this a bad thing? If it is a bad thing, what are one or two specific actions that you would advocate as a legislator to keep and or attract young people to Wyoming?
It's a challenging question for me because I have two grandchildren who have chosen to not come to the University of Wyoming after the last 4 years. And yeah, I understand and feel that right away. What can we do about it? I'm hoping to make it possible for them to get to know there are changes in the works. There are opportunities coming where we can listen and provide the representation and feelings and knowledge for them that they are accepted, are part of our community, and they're an important part of the people of Wyoming. We are a diverse state with our indigenous population, our cultural backgrounds, and we need to emphasize how great that is and make the best of it and work together to put Wyoming ahead of everything. Wyoming, our people, our kids, the future. Thank you.
Hi, this is a problem that is not new. You know, we've had this for decades, and it's a real challenge. Our son just graduated from high school here at Laramie High, and I worry about, is he going to be able to stay close by and find a job and have a future and raise a family? So this is personal as well as all the people that I've talked to around the state. So this is an important question, but it's a multifaceted question. It's not just an issue of can they get jobs, because there are jobs out there, and there are a lot of jobs in Wyoming that go unfilled. It's other things. Can they afford to buy a house or even an apartment? Can they count on appropriate health care and things like that? It's a large problem that we have to keep our focus on, because we can't just turn away and become workforce training for all the surrounding states. And that's essentially what we are. But up to 70% of our young people are gone by the time they're 30, and we just can't keep that up.
So the way I look at kind of the brain drain, I also actually teach at UW. And one of the things that is very interesting is see the young students come through the university, and when you get to talk to them and you get that opportunity, you find out that they will, in some cases, stay in the state. One of the places where I was working, we would hire the interns from UW. And it was one of the ways that we can kind of keep that in town or keep that in our state. But the big thing is that we need to open up to industry and other opportunities, not just, technical, but, things that the university can provide for the state. We just need to have those kind of opportunities and build those opportunities here in the state for us.
First, I think I'll start with that I'm a young woman who wants to stay here. And I'm invested deeply in being able to do that. The things that I struggle with when I think about, I want to start a family here. Childcare isn't something that the state has looked at. Preschool isn't something that the state has supported. We don't have affordable health care in the state. Wyoming's one of the most expensive states for health care. We haven't really done much, even though those solutions are lying around. So we keep talking about solving the young people, solving how do we stop young people from leaving, but we haven't done anything. We haven't expanded childcare, we haven't expanded pre-K, we haven't done anything to increase economic opportunities for them. We talk about bringing in new industries, but they're not here because there's no housing. They're not here because there's not enough people here to work in those industries. And so we're really not providing real incentives to diversify our economy, which would help our young people, help them stay here. But I just don't hear enough about the plight that young people face. They don't make enough money. They don't have childcare, and the state doesn't seem to care.
I appreciate the conversation across the board. I think we all recognize that this is a huge challenge for our state when we see our next generation leaving. And that is a huge loss in terms of talent and those who are stewards of our culture. So the specific actions that I have been able to work on with my colleagues and will continue to work on is building policy around affordable housing and making sure that families and our workforce have the tools that they can to purchase a home. Again, that goes through policy and it goes through the state investing in those things. As was mentioned, access to health care. So that includes OB services, that includes mental health services, just basic care and making sure that it's accessible, that you can get to it and not have to drive 2 hours on a dirt road to get to it. But then once you get to it and access it, you can actually afford it. And there are policies in place that we could expand to make that a reality. And then good paying jobs. And so if somebody wants to be an entrepreneur, great. We should remove the barriers for them to be able to open and expand their own business. Somebody wants to, work in industry, we should be mindful of those opportunities and the benefits they bring for our community. I think too often we say no because no looks like change. And instead we should ask the young people, the next generation, what kind of opportunities they want and then lean into that.
Thank you. Sorry I had to go last on this issue because a lot of what I was going to say has already been said. I agree that we need to work on affordable housing. That's probably the biggest issue in my book, but also on creating new jobs and good jobs to keep our young folks here. The university can do a lot of work in that area. One thing I do want to bring up that I haven't heard yet is that we need to create a culture of welcoming for young people and their values. The legislature has been doing a terrible job, I think, recently about demonizing diversity, equity, and inclusion. All those things seem to me to be unmitigated goods. We want diversity, we want equity. Equity is only fairness, that's a good thing. Inclusion, we want everybody to be included, to have a place here. And the legislature has been taking up all kinds of these culture war issues that try and attack diversity at DEI stuff, and I think that's a bad mistake. They tried to actually defund the university to some extent because they didn't think the university was doing enough to rid itself of diversity, equity, and inclusion, which again, I think are all good things to have. So we need to stop doing that and let young people know that we value them and we value their values are good values, and we share them with the young people, and that they're welcome here. And that's one thing that I think is a big part of the problem.
Okay. Next question, I'm going to kind of combine two that you can feel free to attack as you wish. Mr. Wright, you'll answer first. So, what is the future of fossil fuels in Wyoming? What does it mean for the state budget? And how would you have Wyoming prepare for the future? As well as, how do you feel about plug-in solar and energy independence for Wyoming's citizenry?
Well, certainly the core industries of Wyoming involve minerals, oil, gas, the basic extraction industries. I've worked in my job with many of the people at these companies that have been doing this for years, and they really do fund a major part of what we enjoy here in the state of Wyoming. We have one of the lowest tax bases of tax rates in the entire country, and that's because a large part of the income to the state comes from those industries. That doesn't mean that we just have to give carte blanche. We have to be responsible in how we use our resources. I'm a firm believer in all the above. Whatever the energy sources are, we should be pursuing them, whether they're solar, whether they're wind, gas, oil. We can do them all responsibly, we can protect the environment at the same time, and we can continue to get that kind of income into our state in order to keep our tax rates down and make the state a livable, wonderful place to be. And the people that run those industries, they're good people. They want the best for our state as well. And we want to be able to work with them, and I have great relationships with many of them. And I think that the future is bright for Wyoming if we pursue all the above in these various sources of energy.
So could you repeat the question? Summarize it, I guess.
Sure.
Sorry.
I will try to summarize. So what is the future of fossil fuels in Wyoming? How do you feel about energy independence for Wyoming? And what does all of this mean for our state budget? And how you would have Wyoming prepare for the future?
Okay, all right. So as far as fossil fuels go for Wyoming, Wyoming's a wonderful place for fossil fuels. For the example of oil, gas, coal. Not only that, we have some of the best wind power in the nation in our state. We're a class 5 system, which doesn't really mean a lot to a lot of people, but what it is it's about if you notice the Wyoming breeze, you got a 15-mile-an-hour breeze most days. It's a wonderful place for that. Not only that, the fact that the windmill operation, it takes a lot of fossil fuels to create windmills. And that's one of the things that's actually good for the state is that, you got to run the steel plants, you got to run, the silica melting operations and everything like that. So you got to use pretty much all the fossil fuels. So one of those things that we have to look at is in its entirety, not just as a piece, not just as a wind energy sector, not just as a fossil fuel sector. We have to look at it in its entirety to see what we can possibly do to move forward and keep our industries running and do them responsibly. And that's the big thing when it comes to what I've done with engineering, is that you have to make sure that you do it responsibly so you don't hurt the environment, that the ecosystem surrounding there is still a good ecosystem and you haven't done damage to the future. So.
Anybody remember what the temperature was in January, in December, or walked by the Greenbelt and seen how little water we have? I believe that's because we have caused climate change. And fossil fuels are a major proponent in that. So I think we need to have an honest conversation about what the future looks like when we're talking about energy use and what it means, what the consequences are of using fossil fuels. But our state is reliant on fossil fuels. We use fossil fuels to pay our bills. Oil and gas pays a good chunk of our state revenues. And so before we have a future in Wyoming where we can talk honestly about what we're going to be doing differently, we're going to have to figure out how we're going to raise funds and create job opportunities for the people that are working in these industries. Because I think we've done a poor job of saying, okay, well, we know that maybe folks aren't going to be buying our coal for 10 more years, or in 10 more years the way that they are right now. But what are we creating in light of that? What opportunities are we creating so that people can walk away from that, and how are we diversifying our economy? I think that there needs to be more honest conversation about that. The other part of that question was, how do you feel about plug-in solar? Love it. Let's talk about freedom. How do we make sure that you have the freedom to get power the way that you choose to, particularly with the affordability problem of how much it costs?
Thank you. I also picked up on that last part of the plug-in solar. So I co-sponsored that bill this year. So it's a great opportunity for those who are renting to be able to have an investment in a solar panel that they can pick up and take with them if they move to another house or get to buy a house. So I'll continue to run that bill and invite you all to support me in that. I want to zoom into Albany County, specifically to House District 14. So historically, we've not had any dead dinosaurs, right? So Albany County is not known for its, its mineral production or its fossil fuels. However, there are currently plays right now in my district for bentonite, a mine that is looking to set up shop to produce kitty litter. Maybe not the most glamorous thing in the world, but something that most of us in this room probably use. And then there is a critical mineral play as well up near the Laramie Peak area. And that would support innovation and technology. And we know how many of our devices are dependent on those critical minerals. I see those as opportunities, again, for good paying jobs and to keep our young people here in the community. I think Wyoming will always be known as a state that produces energy. I do support an all of the above strategy in that, because right now we are so dependent on fossil fuels and minerals to pay our bills that until we have an honest conversation about true tax reform, this is what pays the bills. And so if we're talking about removing property tax, guess what will become more dependent on? Fossil fuel industry to pay the bills.
Thank you. So what is the future of fossil fuels? It is true that coal has been paying our bills for a long time. We've made a lot of money on it. But I think the problem we have here is we should stop thinking about coal as fuel. Why do we burn it? Why don't we build stuff with it? Coal can be turned into bricks. There's actually a demonstration project going on right now on the University of Wyoming campus where they figured out a way to take out the flammable stuff and leave the carbon molecules behind, and they make bricks out of it and build buildings with it. So you can still mine coal and build stuff with it. You can turn coal into graphene. You can turn it into carbon fiber. All are great building materials. Graphene is starting to, there's a way of turning graphene into semiconductors to process data. So maybe we could stop using silicon and use graphene to make computing power need less power. So there's all kinds of things you can do with coal rather than burn it. Let's keep that carbon out of the air. We should harness our renewables. We do have a lot of wind. We have a lot of solar. We're talking about wanting to create new industries and new jobs for our young people to stay. There's going to be jobs to be had in putting up wind turbines and managing wind turbines and managing solar energy. Lots of new technology and new energy sources that we have in bountiful, and we should start to harness them.
All right. Just a quick.
Hey, Gary.
Oh my, Mr. Wilkin, I'm so sorry. You're just right there, and I've lost my whiskers.
No problem. I was going to issue a challenge to the university to produce research and technology and use those things to help turn these fossil fuels into safe and concrete ways to join with the other sources of energy and bring us the answer. I discovered that. I was a code enforcement officer, and we had a problem with 10,000 tires. They're still sitting out there, most of them. I just had a discussion with a friend of mine just the other day that one of the major industries, Mountain Cement, is in the process of a remodel project. How many of you have noticed the big tower with the blinking red lights? And it's doubling the altitudes. And that tower is going to be putting heat into it. And guess what? One of the things they can do with that heat, they can melt tires for energy and produce products that we need in cement. I think our university has the skills and talents and people, and I trust them. And I know we have people we know. They are a resource that we need to use to meet this challenge. We can do it. Put our people together, put the energy together, work together to beat the climate change. That's our war we had to fight. The climate change, the changing weather, the changing planet. We have to win that war or we cease to exist. Pretty real challenge. And I think our university has some great talent and will help us do that. And I appreciate everyone here sharing good ideas for that. Thank you.
I apologize sincerely for that. Our next question, Mr. Davenport, we'll start with you answering first. Water rights and water access drive the Rocky Mountain West. What would you do as an elected official to help protect Wyoming's water from claims put on it by other states?
Well, one of the big things is right now we lose, I believe it's somewhere around 80% of our water to neighboring states. The big thing about that is these are pacts that have been in place since the 50s, somewhere in there. I don't know the exact numbers, but nevertheless, they've been around for quite a while. And it works just like all water rights. So we have to sit there and think about what we can do within the legality of where the water goes. Now, as far as our groundwater and things like that, being able to, capture and use that and still be able to, replenish, there's things like here in Laramie where the aquifer, there was a little pushback on, was the septic tanks up on the hill because they have potential to leak and then go into the aquifer. So there's things like that, but we just have to be good stewards of what we have right now. And that's the big thing is that, there's a lot of things out there legally that we have to abide by different pacts, and maybe it's time to revisit some of these and see what we can possibly do to, keep water here in Wyoming and keep it where we need it.
Water law is one of the most complicated sections of statutes, I think, that exist in Wyoming. So I don't know that I have a perfect answer for you based on that, but I'll say that a lot of this is also something that comes from discussions with other states. The Colorado River impact, how are we sending water down the river to our neighboring states? And as Ross mentioned, we need to be good stewards of that water. One of the things that uses a ton of water in this state is ranching and irrigation. And I don't know if we've had an honest conversation and really looked into, are we doing that appropriately in a way that is the best stewards possible of that water? I think it would be important for us to figure out what's the minimum level of water that we're going to have in our river before we continue to allow it to potentially irrigate in ways that aren't as responsible, good stewards of that water. But it's a complicated conversation to have that we have to have with other states. And also a product of the last question when we're talking about climate change and drought. We're going to continue to have this problem, and we're going to have to continue to figure out what we need to do to solve it. Groundwater is something I helped sponsor a bill this year to do groundwater studies, specifically looking at how what do we have, and I have a lot more to say, but I have a stop sign.
I will do my best to pick up on that. So yes, we did this last legislative session pass a bill to look at a groundwater study. So data is power, right? Knowledge is power. And so our state engineers are diligently going through to figure out what is our water picture look like? What are we using? What is in the groundwater? What is industry using? What is ag using? And so gathering all that so we can make smart, informed decisions, I think will be a really important job of the next few legislatures. But in terms of what we're doing now, we put a lot of money into lawyers. And I love the lawyers that are coming out of UW. I mean, they're great, and a lot of them are very good at water law, but litigation is not the only tool in our toolbox, and sometimes I think we rely too heavily on that. So this last session, we were talking about budget cuts. Our colleagues were talking about cuts to the Department of Environmental Quality and cuts to the state engineer. Guess what state agencies look after our water? Those guys. So it's important to me to make sure that we are adequately staffed with our state agencies so that we can do a good job of understanding how we're using our water and being proactive about that. Last thing here is I love the idea of looking at our aging infrastructure for irrigation. We know that because it's old, it's not as effective as it could be, and we're losing water from evaporation. And so there's some proactive things we can do on the ground to help our ag users.
Okay, thank you. So I do serve on the Select Water Committee, and the Colorado River Compact is currently under renegotiation with the downstream states. And we're keeping a close eye on that. We do have a good legal staff working on that. The last session, we did pass a water conservation measure so that people in Wyoming could voluntarily conserve their water but not lose their rights. Stop already? No. That can't be.
No, hang on.
Okay, wow. So there's only two ways to solve the problem. We need more supply, or we need less use. Well, we don't have any control over the supply. We can't make it rain more. So can we control the use? And there's an idea that I've heard just here at this conference, here this week in Salt Lake, about a desalinization project in San Diego. If we could, so a lot of the Middle East uses desalination to water the Middle East. What if we put a big desalination plant in San Diego to reduce the demand on the Colorado River in California? Let California start using Pacific Ocean water, which they have in quantity, and reduce their demand on the Colorado River. That's a solution that could work and save water for the rest of us upstream. That's not something we can do in the legislature, but we can sure advocate for it at the federal level.
And I agree that we need to look at those things, but we also have to look at ourselves. And for our house, I discovered when I go to brush my teeth, it takes about 3 minutes for that water to warm up enough to wash my face. Do you know where that water usually goes? Just straight down the sink. Decided to put a bucket down there and get the water out, and we water with the evergreens in front of our house with the water. I get 2 buckets of water every morning, one from the kitchen sink and one from the bathroom sink. That waters that thing. There's creative ways we can use that, our own imaginations and thoughts, and come up with ways to spread that water out, to reach out. My parents grew up in western Kansas where we had a dust bowl in 1957, but it wasn't as big as the one in 33. Dust bowls, drought, climate change. We're dealing with it. We've got the imagination, we've got the creation, we can do it. We can find ways to use our water less and use what we need and get it out there and spread it out. Use some light filters in the windows of our houses for cooling. Shades. It used to be the thing you pulled the shade down at night and put it up, and now we have blinds and stuff, but the tinted shades do a tremendous thing at cooling our house. And I think that's something you have to look at. We're going to need cooler structures. And we got the technology with the university. We're going to push them and make them work for us.
You got work to do, guys.
I'm getting all kinds of assignments here. Well, I can remember being stationed in places where if you're lucky enough to take a shower, it was a salt water shower. And so I do appreciate water. And I've looked at this quite a bit. And the 1922 Colorado River Compact, allocates who's supposed to have, how much water in each of the states. And the lower states, like Nevada, Arizona, California, for years have been taking far more than their allocation. And the upper states, of which we are one, Wyoming, we have not been using our full allocation. So there is that, but as was mentioned also, they have a lot more lawyers than we do, and that's part of the problem. So we do have to push to get the allocation that is due us, because not only were we signatories to the 1922 compact, but many of our water rights are senior to that. They go before that. So we really have a lot of rights to this water. Now, I'd also like to say that ideas like desalination plants, we should have people pursue that as much as possible, especially the places on the coast like San Diego. We should be looking at infrastructure. As Trey was saying, I think we lose a lot of water through leakage and breakage in our infrastructure. We should also look at how we use water in agriculture. There are more efficient ways to use it than what we're doing now. And so we really need to approach this on a multi-path so that we try to attack it from all these different directions. Our residential water use in this country has actually been going down in the last decades. And that's because of higher efficiency things. So I will stop now.
Okay. Ms. Provenza, you will take the first stab at this one. A number of questions here about data centers. And I did not mention, and I apologize for that, the Vote 411 or the Vote 411 voter guide did ask 5 specific questions of all of these candidates. So I'm prioritizing the ones that they have not already answered there, just so you know. Okay, so back to data centers. Ms. Provenza and all of you, what do you want to do at the state level vis-a-vis data centers, hyperscale AI data centers?
I love getting the hardest question, and I'm the first person. I guess I'll walk you through my thought process on this, because I don't know how I would make a decision on a bill that's in front of me, depending on what it says. First, I'll tell you that I personally am not excited or enthusiastic about expanding AI or the use of data. I think that there are a lot of questions about this. I think a lot of people are certainly very upset about it. When I talk about power inherent in the people, you have a lot of people who are demanding moratoriums on data centers. I don't know what my approach will be when it's in front of me. It really depends, because I also, on the other hand, I stand on working class values, and there are people that have worked really hard in Cheyenne that have been able to buy their homes because they've worked on data centers. I am the AFL-CIO's friend of labor for 2026. And so how do we think about the opportunities that those people have, and how do we replace them with something different? So that if we are going to say, let's pause data, it doesn't mean let's pause opportunities for the hardworking people in our communities. I will say that we provide a tax exemption on data centers. I think that needs to be repealed. I think that we need to ensure that data centers are more than paying their fair share, particularly given the questions about the resources and use that they have on energy. And so we're going to need people that have the right values when they make these decisions, and they might not know exactly what that answer is right now.
Thank you all. Again, a challenging question, because I don't feel like I've heard enough from my constituents on this issue. It's definitely a hot button in Laramie County, and appreciate the nuance there. I'm not a no for the sake of saying no type of person. I want to know the strategy behind a pause, and what are we going to look at, and what do we hope to accomplish. That being said, and I think this is something that we can address this upcoming legislative session. I'll get geeky with you guys here for a second. So there's something in Wyoming called the Industrial Siting Act. And so when a large-scale industrial project comes into a community, there's an opportunity to associate or to negotiate around the impact. So how is that project going to impact our schools, our water, our roads, our police force? There's an opportunity for the local community to come to the table and work alongside that industry to negotiate those things and to come to an agreement on shared values and how that industry is going to be a good partner. Right now, the data centers are exempt from our Industrial Siting Act. So again, that is something we can address this legislative session to make sure that they go through the same process as any large industrial project does. Look at it from a equity standpoint.
Yes, this is a very difficult question. I've heard a lot about data centers here at this conference already. As I said before, I serve on the Select Water Committee, so one of the issues with data centers is water usage. We've already taken this topic up in the Select Water Committee and heard some testimony about water use. And what we've learned is that the newer technology, which most of the data centers and the proposed ones are going to use, is something called a closed loop cooling system, which doesn't use very much water at all. It's like the radiator in your car. How often do you put water in your car? It's a circulating system that uses a radiator to just have the air disperse it. So we can solve the water problem, I think, by requiring closed loop systems. And we're going to be drafting a bill, hopefully, that might require that for new systems. The electrical power is the big problem. How do you solve that problem? And one thing that I'm exploring is what we call Beyonce. Bring your own new clean energy. These data centers require so much power they're going to override. They would take up all the power we currently generate in the state of Wyoming to run one center. That's not feasible. So they're going to need to build their own power. And can we require them to use clean energy? Can we require them to use solar? Can we require them to use wind energy, renewables? Is nuclear clean? We've heard about that at this conference as well. So there's ways of managing these things. I don't think we can stop them because they have some social utility. The genie's out of the bottle. I'm not sure we can ever get it back in the bottle. So I think management and control of them so they don't do the damage that they could do is the way we should go.
I think the other thing we have to do, and I'll follow with what everyone said, is really a key that the data centers probably are going to be going in and we're going to have to deal with them. Let's use our technology and training to make them as best as possible. But as a background in law enforcement, I know what you can do with cameras and surveillance, and it's not always that good for human rights. So think about those things. People knowing everything we do, judgments being made. Where's our privacy? Good questions are going to have to be asked in those areas about our data centers also. And I think we really have to represent and know. We have to recognize oversight of these data centers, that they don't get carried away to take away the rights and privileges of our citizens. You've got to have free speech. You've got to have free to take a walk in the wilderness. And you've got to have cooperation to keep the world around us wild and free, so that we can enjoy them as human beings, and the other life on this planet can share with us the gifts that are given to us. Thank you.
Well, data centers, like any new or evolving technology, is a double-edged sword. It's both an opportunity and a potential danger, and you have to really be careful. I think one of the things that we've been remiss about in the past is we tend to look at some of these projects one by one, just at that one project, and we decide if we want it or not. I think we really need, at the very least, a two-level review of these kind of proposals, where you look at the individual proposal and what are they going to do, and then you take a step back and you say, now, how does that fit into the big picture? You know, what are we really getting? Because if you don't do that, you can approve this one and this one and this one, and you look up and all of a sudden it's a very different environment than you thought was coming. Mm-hmm. But you look at some of the technologies like closed loop for water. That's an excellent thing. We should require that. But it's, you know, I'm an engineer. Engineers by their nature are skeptics. So when they come and they tell me this is closed loop, we're not going to need any of your water, I'm going to say, show me that. I want to see the numbers. I want to see the design. I want to see the data and monitor them. Make sure that we monitor them. You don't want a situation like they had in Cheyenne where they dumped wastewater into the system and completely contaminated the system for months. You've got to watch them. On the other hand, let's not look past the opportunity. Lots of jobs, lots of good jobs, lots of clean jobs. Do you want a data center down the street or do you want a pig farm down the street? You have to make choices, right? We can't just freeze things, but we need to look at them with really a close eye.
So my perspective on data centers is the fact that they need infrastructure. They need a lot of energy. They need a lot of water, depending on their system. Like we were talking about with the closed loop system. That's what we need in Wyoming. We cannot use giant cooling towers to cool their facilities. That's just something we cannot do. That's a lot of water that's wasted. We've already talked about being good stewards of the water. So therefore, the data centers have to be good stewards of the water. Now, if you look at it, you're either going to use high electricity or high water. So we've established that we got to go low water. So what do we do with the electricity? They need to come in, and if they're going through this process of putting in a data center, they need to bring in the infrastructure. In my opinion, they need to be paying for the infrastructure that they're going to be using, because they're going to use an incredible amount of electricity that our grids just are not capable or currently capable of handling some of these massive, massive data centers. So it's things like that they need to, put, back into our communities and be able to find ways to get that energy to the source or from the source to their location to be able to take care of it.
Okay, Ms. Sherwood, you will take the first stab at this one. What would you do to protect Wyoming's merit selection process for judges?
Thank you for that question. One, I support the process fully the way it exists today. And if someone is unclear of what that process looks like, there's a very intelligent person in this room who can speak to that because they have served in that capacity over there. I believe in the separation of powers in the three branches. I believe that there's an appropriate checks and balance in place, and that the legislature should not be meddling in those veils between our three branches of government. And I also don't believe that our Supreme Court judges should be elected. Thank you.
Thank you for this question. This is near and dear to my heart. As most of you know, I'm a retired law professor, and I work with judges. I used to be a practicing lawyer, and I think the merit selection system that Wyoming has is one of the best in the country. It is actually very nonpartisan. It allows qualified judges to serve and then serve without political pressure. The system is not broken. And I don't know why anybody would want to break a system that has generally served us very, very well. Judges need to be protected from political backlash. And we've seen, and that's the impetus for trying to change the system, is that some people didn't like a decision of the Supreme Court, and therefore now they decide they have to change the selection system because they didn't like a decision that went against their beliefs. And that is the death of law. The rule of law needs to be protected, and having independent judiciary is the way to do that. I do serve on the Judiciary Committee as well as the Select Water Committee. The issue has come up before us, and we have not taken it up. There's 3 lawyers on the Judiciary Committee. All of us spoke eloquently in favor of the current system, and so far no bill has moved out of our committee, and I intend to keep it that way in my capacity on the Judiciary Committee.
I support what Ken is saying there about the judiciary. And part of my experience as a deputy sheriff was to escort people to and from court. So I've been in a lot of courtrooms and a lot of hearings. And it's very interesting seeing the dynamic and hearing things. One of my concerns is some of the stories of some of the former judges that did have problems that maybe should have retired earlier because of substance abuse perhaps, or health, dementia, etc. And we do need to take a look at how we review and evaluate our judges. And we have an opportunity to vote. So our system is pretty well set to do it. Maybe just a little bit of tinkering could improve that and take that. And I think that would continue to be a solid resource.
Thank you, Gary. I agree. I think that the merit system is a good system. I don't think that you should introduce politics into the selection of judges. Just because you happen to disagree with a ruling or two, that's no reason to try to overhaul the system. I mean, the judges are there to try to make fair, impartial decisions, and by getting them into office through a merit-based system, I can't think of a better way to do it. I think Trey said it well. I think we have one of the best systems in the country, and I don't think we should be messing with it. Don't try to fix it if it's not broken.
So I'm going to be honest, and to be blunt, I don't really know a lot about it, so I'm not going to really speak to that issue, because I mean, I know what a merit-based system is, but I don't really know exactly what this full system is entailing, so I'm going to have to do more research, so that way I can talk intelligently on it the next time I talk to you guys. So.
Good job.
Just being honest. Yeah.
I did, before I was in the legislature, I did academic research on perceptions of legitimacy of different legal mechanisms, so police legitimacy, but I also looked at judicial legitimacy. And so it's this idea of, does the public trust the current system that's in place? And when you look at states that have a different system than ours, so ours, the governor appoints people. There's a robust process before of who's recommended to the governor, but it's an appointment process. And in states that are different from ours, they have elected judges. The people in those states don't believe in the legitimacy of their courts. And our judicial system is not going to benefit if the people don't believe in it, if they don't believe in the rule of law. So I want to protect the current system that we have. I know it's one of the best, but based on the perceptions of the public. But also, one thing that would really benefit our courts is if our legislatures stop trying to pass unconstitutional laws. We bring unconstitutional laws every year, we pass them through, and then we shake our fists at the judicial branch and we say that they're doing a terrible job and they're activist judges. And I'm not going to curse tonight, but that is BS. We continue to put our courts in those positions. I continue to vote against bills that are unconstitutional, and I will continue to do so.
Okay. Next question, Mr. Chestek, you will go first. Lobbyists haunt the Capitol. I love this question. So how will you make sure that you represent constituents and not the professional lobbyists?
Thank you for the question. I think that there's a little bit of a misunderstanding of the role of lobbyists in the current system. We don't have our own staff. We do have the shared staff, LSO, but they're overworked. Sometimes we need to get information to help us make a good decision, and sometimes it's the lobbyists that give us information that we can use. Now, we have to think carefully about that information and make sure we're getting good information and check it out, but they have access to information that we need to make decisions. So a lot of our contacts with lobbyists aren't so much them trying to force us to vote their way. They're giving us information that we need to make up our minds. So lobbyists do serve a useful role in that regard. And even when I do get an answer from a lobbyist, that doesn't mean I'm going to vote that way. I'm going to evaluate that information. So I don't think we need to ban lobbyists. I think lobbyists do serve a useful purpose. I always make up my own mind. I will talk to lobbyists, and I will happily talk to them and vote the other way if I think I have to vote the other way. I'm not bound by what they tell me. So it just independent judgment and critical thinking are skills that I bring to the job and will continue to do so.
I agree with what Ken is saying about the lobbyists there, but one of the things we have to do as we deal with and think about legislation and what we want done is to learn to be civil in discourse and sit down and talk to each other and to listen to each other and develop those skills to understand and work on what's important. And we've got to kind of watch out for those people who want to bring things in from foreign thought systems or money sources to influence government without necessarily doing the best for the people. We need to be able to evaluate, discuss, figure out who is saying what needs to be done and who's the money behind it, and make those decisions once we know.
Well, I think Ken's right. A major role of the lobbyists is education. They come to legislators or other people that are making decisions that affect their industries or their clients, and they're trying to educate them about what their needs are and what they would like. Certainly, they're trying to be persuasive, but you can learn and listen from them without necessarily being swayed by them. And it's a balance. When I was running development systems in the Air Force, with budgets in the hundreds of millions of dollars, yes, I would get people coming to me saying, oh, you really need to go with, Boeing. You really need to go with Lockheed, whatever it was. And you learn to sort of see through the smoke and understand, where the truth lies. And I was meeting with a group just a couple of weeks ago. Again, they were looking at me as a potential legislator and trying to sort of, I think, get in a little early influence. And I said, well, that's very interesting. Now, if somebody disagreed with you on that point, what kind of argument would they make? And you see them just sit back for a minute and, and you can tell a lot by what people say in situations like that. So I've had a lot of experience in sort of figuring out where the truth lies, knowing where to draw the line between education and influence that a potential lobbyist might make, and make use of them because they have knowledge about these industries and these things that you need. As was said, we don't have staff.
All right, so I've never been in the spooky building to see the haunting lobbyists, but my thing about that is that you got to listen to everybody. It doesn't matter who it is, difference of opinion, whatever it is, you should listen to everybody because everybody has a voice that has a different opinion. You might even be in a closed group and have two people there. Two different opinions agreeing on the same topic, yet can still disagree. But you should listen to every single person that comes across because they will have information that you do not have. Like I'm learning a lot tonight. There's a lot of information coming out and I'm learning a lot. I'm loving this. But that's a big thing. So I've never met the spooky people yet, but I look forward to learning more about this and the process that they do. So.
I'll echo what some folks said before I make my next point. There are a lot of good people doing good work that are lobbyists, the bad word that many folks have. But I'll also say, I think you've seen what I do when there are bad actors as lobbyists. There were checks distributed out on the House floor this year. And so I commit to you that if I continue to see any behavior like that, I'll take a picture of it and I'll send it to the press. Because that is not something that should happen in the people's house. I respect just being in that Capitol is, I don't know how to put it in the words. You look up at the ceiling. And anyway, I'm starting to sound like one of my colleagues, Steve Harshman. But there's something very humbling about that building. There's something that calls and demands for something better in every person. And I think that that's true for a lot of the lobbyists that are there, but when they are not on their best behavior, you can make sure that I will hold them accountable.
Thank you for this question. I scare easily, so I was getting a little nervous as you started there. But I do agree that our beautiful Capitol building has a spiritual element to it that demands that respect. So for the most part, I think people are there for the right reasons. I wanted to share with you guys just sort of this hierarchy, right? So when we're in session, we're inundated constantly with information, which is great. It helps us do our job. But when I sit down and I say, all right, whose email am I going to read first? Whose phone call am I going to return first? My hierarchy is, are you a constituent in House District 14? Yes, then you get my full attention. Then are you a resident of Albany County? Yes, I'm going to get to you. Are you a resident of the state of Wyoming? I don't care where in the state. I want to hear from you. I want to engage with you. And then if there are coalitions that are representing Wyoming residents, so we have an outdoor rec industry that has a lobbyist. We have labor. We have teachers. We have municipalities. We have Wyoming businesses. All of those are represented by a neighbor of yours that just so happens to have the title of lobbyist. What I don't do is prioritize out-of-state influence. So if you don't have a 307 area code, I might not get to you right away. Once I understand where you live, I will return your call. But if there's an organization sending an out-of-state lobbyist into our state capitol, I usually walk right by them.
Okay. We are back to Mr. Wilkin. Oh, Ken, my God.
No, you got me. I started it.
Ken, I'm very sorry. I go to bed at 8 o'clock, so I am a little bit dopey. So you're up next, Mr. Chestick.
Grace.
No, I started that last issue. I've already spoken to it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I messed you up.
So.
My bad. That was my bad. That was my bad.
Maybe you guys need to go to bed.
Okay. Sorry. Everyone's doing great.
Let us return to the next question, Mr. Wilkin. People and candidates often contend that Laramie and Wyoming need to grow. What is the purpose of growth? Is it a means to an end? If it is a means, then what are the end goals?
Well, being a preacher, you can imagine my big concern is that the growth is part of our process as human beings. If we don't grow, we die. I mean, if an embryo doesn't grow, you don't have birth. So it's important to have nurturing and caring and reaching out to each other. And we need to look at ways we could do that in our communities. Sharing together, I mean, certainly churches is one way, but there's a lot of open space where people with recreational areas love to get out. Our hunters get out and have a time alone. We need to let the space of Wyoming go, and the Wyoming spirit guide and share. There's a definite different spirit in Wyoming that we kind of take honest claim for ourselves. And it's more than just cowboy up. It's recognized that Wyoming folks take care of each other, recognize there are more important things, see the spiritual things and the things of life around us, and celebrate those. Amen.
Thanks, Gary. Well, I think that smart, thoughtful, responsible growth is a good thing, but you have to do it in a reasonable way, right? We can't just freeze everything the way it is and say that's how it's going to be. I've been stationed at various places around the world, and I know the one I think about when I think about growth in particular is I was stationed, or you could say sentenced, to Los Angeles for a number of years. And that kind of growth we do not want here. That's just unbelievable. It's just people everywhere, buildings everywhere, everything's covered with concrete or asphalt. We do not want that in Wyoming. But on the other hand, we want opportunities for our children. We want opportunities for our neighbors to have good jobs. We want industries. We want all those good things. We just have to do it smartly, thoughtfully, and don't try to make it too fast, because if you try to make it too fast, you're going to make mistakes. So growth isn't necessarily bad. You just have to do it very carefully.
So I'm going to echo the same thing on the growth. Growth is, bringing in industry, bringing in new jobs, bringing in whatever it is to keep people here. That's good. To bring in, out-of-staters to move into Wyoming to understand just how beautiful our place is, that's another good thing. But that does come with growth. But, with all things, like we were saying here, is that you got to do it responsibly. You can't just, for example, open up, industries where they're like, oh, well, we'll just give you all these tax breaks and things like that, just to bring in more jobs and bring in more people. That's the irresponsible way to grow things. But if you bring them in with a plan of action to be able to say, okay, you can bring in your industry, but these are the requirements that you're going to have to deal with, then that's a good way to grow. But like you were saying, that we don't have to grow fast. We can grow at a good Wyoming pace. It's one of those things. We don't have to rush it. We're here for the long haul, and that's what we do.
I think the question of whether growth is good or bad really depends on the status of where you are right now. If everybody in Wyoming had all of their needs met and everything was taken care of, then maybe I'd be talking about building a wall and making Colorado pay for it, right? But that's not the reality of the situation that we're in. We need to bring in opportunities for folks, right? And so I think, but we also have the problem of, if we're going to be inviting people in and we want to grow our state and we want to bring folks in, every person that comes to our state right now gets about $30,000 in government services that they don't pay for. So this state needs to figure out how we're going to tackle that issue when we talk about growth. We need to figure out how are we going to equal out that balance. And I don't know that we've necessarily figured that out, but I know that if we stick to what we're doing right now, it's not going to work. People are struggling more than they were 2 years ago for health care. They're struggling more to afford a place to live. And so growth is going to allow for us to increase the number of homes potentially, right, that are going to help solve an issue that people can't afford to put a roof over their head. It's going to create jobs. It's going to allow them to buy groceries. Those are the things that I think about when I'm trying to figure out, is growth a good idea, or do we need to stop, like the sign is telling me?
I'm going to take an opportunity to reframe the conversation. So a lot of times we hear growth as change, and change is hard, and not everyone is comfortable with new things. And a lot of times we think of growth as all of these outsiders coming into our community and changing things. But what if we reframed it as that neighbor that just moved in down the street, they wanted to move here to Wyoming because they love our culture. They love our way of life. They want to embrace the Wyoming way of doing things. Then maybe that change seems less scary, right? And maybe that's something that we can say, well, hey neighbor, you moved here for the same reasons I live here. What if we talk about growth on our own terms? I want to commend our city council. I want to commend our county commissioners, because really this is defined at the local level through zoning, through code, through that bad word regulation. But regulation really is a reflection of our shared values. So if we say this is how we want to grow, we want to be the best version of Laramie or the best version of Albany County, we don't need to be like Fort Collins, man. We can be better than them. But we can do that in our own terms, but we have to realize regulation, code, and zoning are tools we can use to preserve our values and our way of life.
This is a great question. It's a very simple question with an extremely complex answer. Is growth good or is growth bad? The former faculty senate colleague of mine, he might even be in the room, I can't see who all is in the room, once made the point to me that unlimited 4% growth is the logic of a cancer cell. Yeah, but on the other hand, growth can help us solve some of the problems that we have in terms of keeping young people here and in terms of keeping taxes and services in balance. So growth is not necessarily good, it's not necessarily bad. What I want to focus on or what I want to aim for is sustainable growth. There are some kinds of growth that would be bad for us. Growth of if we put more fossil fuel growth and burning more carbon, putting more carbon in the air, that's bad growth. But if we have growth in other renewable sectors, that's good growth. So you can't answer it yes or no. It depends. The correct answer to any legal problem is it depends, and it depends on what you're talking about. There are some things that we do need to grow, but we need to have a conversation about that with each other and be selective and make sure that whatever growth we promote is sustainable over the long term.
Okay, I think this potentially will be the final question, and there are a lot of really good ones in here. So I've been going back and forth on where we would end, but I think I'll go with this one. What will you, Mr. Wright, you'll start, I apologize. What will you attempt to do to address Wyoming's limited access to health care?
Excellent question, and I think a recent poll across the state showed that health care and health care access and affordability were one of the top issues on the minds of the people in Wyoming, and we've got to address this. I spent an entire day, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, they had the Wyoming Healthcare Policy Summit right here in Laramie. I spent the whole day listening to people from the run hospitals, care providers, everybody involved in the healthcare industry came together to try to brainstorm and find ways that we can approach this. And it's not an easy problem to solve. There are at least 6 rural hospitals in Wyoming that could close within the next 3 years because they just don't have the funding. You've got hospitals that have very small patient populations, but their fixed costs for their infrastructure and so forth are just as large as they would be for a much larger patient population. So you see these hospitals in larger metropolitan areas, yeah, they can get along fine. We don't have that. So we have to look at ways that how can we help this? We have this federal program now bringing more of the rural health care dollars into the state. We have to think about how can we best use that. We tried to, the governor I know tried to make it so that we could invest it and make it to be a continuous flow of money. They didn't allow us to do that, but there may be other ways to do that. But we have to attack this. Healthcare is, I would say that healthcare and housing affordability are two of the biggest problems that we have to solve.
So I agree that healthcare is a very, very strong issue that we need to take care of. I'm unfortunately accident prone, so I use the healthcare system a lot. I've had 2 shoulder reconstructions and hit by a car and everything else. But the thing is that I see it firsthand from a trauma aspect because I've received those bills afterwards. They are astronomical. They are not cheap. I've seen, I was in rehab for 1.5 years. So you can imagine what I saw for bills. They are what they are. I mean, it's hard to deal with. Now, as far as the rural communities go, like I was saying, rural communities, they need the same access to healthcare that we have here in Laramie or people have in other of the larger cities, and we have to find a way to make sure that we take care of the rural communities and take care of our people. Our people in this state. It's having to drive 2 hours to get to a doctor is not really going to be your best thing. But it's one of those things that we need to find a way to fund those resources in those locations.
I am a product of a house that had to use Medicaid. So Medicaid was something that I was able to get access to health care through when I was a kid. I think the state for a long time has refused the option to expand Medicaid, which would greatly reduce the cost of healthcare for everybody else because of the number of unpaid medical bills that go to everyone else. When my appendix burst, it cost $60,000 and I didn't pay for it, but somebody else did. And so we need to figure out how we're going to help pay for the uncompensated care that our critical access hospitals do pay for. One of the things that I would like to see happen and work towards is a perpetuity fund that puts money into an investment fund that pays for our critical access hospitals so that they are able to pay those uncompensated care down instead of putting that burden onto the rest of the people. I also think that that funding could help pay for maternal health care. Every budget session, I bring funding for maternal health care. Every budget session, my colleagues turn it down, and we lose maternal health facilities across this state. We need to do something about that. We need to start with funding, but we need long-term options as well. I believe the expansion of Medicaid for moms was incredibly helpful for that, but it's not enough. And I think the other thing that we're facing is that doctors are leaving because we continue to bring unconstitutional abortion bans that make doctors think that they can't practice healthcare here. We need to stop doing that.
It's hard to follow this one here. And this is a complex topic. I had the great pleasure of working alongside the Department of Health on the bill that supported the rural health care transformation funds, getting them out here in Wyoming. If you are a healthcare provider and you're not aware of this, there are grants now available for critical access hospitals, for emergency medical services, for mental health services, and then later in the fall there will be funding for preventative care, so healthy lifestyles, healthy diets. So that's a start, but again, throwing money at it is not always the answer. Here, we can increase our Medicaid reimbursement rates to help with those costs of care. We can embrace regionalization. So even though most of the time I say my default is local control on this one issue for healthcare, we need to build out economies of scale. And so I do think it's appropriate for the state to take the lead in some of these areas, helping support our rural communities. And then absolutely want to mirror that. We need to stop demonizing our OB providers and our healthcare providers and driving them into other states where they don't have to fear litigation or losing their license for providing health care. Our state constitution allows each competent adult to make their own health care decisions, and we need to stop demonizing that.
Okay, I'm going to echo a couple of things that Trey and Carly said. Clearly expanding Medicare and Medicaid, I should say, is going to be a big one. Also, stop passing the unconstitutional abortion bans. Federal health, the rural health care dollars are going to be very helpful. I want to echo those things. I want to bring in two new things. We have a program already called WHAMI. It's a program that helps Wyoming students go to medical school. We don't have a medical school here in Wyoming, but they can start their college preparation, their medical school, take the first 2 years here in Wyoming, and then go to University of Washington and finish their clinical training, do clinical rotations here in Wyoming in exchange for agreeing to stay in Wyoming for some period of time. If we don't have doctors leaving after medical school, they want to stay here. That'll help us provide more care. So supporting and expanding, if we can, the WHAMI program would be great. Another idea is maybe we should think about licensing naturopathic physicians. There's a whole discipline of medicine called naturopathic medicine that they have a lot of the same training. They have a different way of looking at people, and if we were able to license them and encourage more naturopathic physicians to locate in Wyoming, that also might help us provide more care, because it's a manpower problem. We don't have enough doctors, and if we could encourage more doctors to stay in Wyoming, that would help.
Another step I would take with following that, Ken, and look at all of us and say, how much do you know about first aid and care? And all of us keep developing and thinking about where we're at. We served a church called Last Chance Colorado. How many of you know where Last Chance, Colorado is? It's 80 miles east of Denver and 80 miles from about anywhere else. It's almost more isolated than Townsend, Wyoming. Not quite, but almost. I was the closest person with an advanced first aid degree to medical care if anybody had an accident there. And I ended up responding to several of them with just my knowledge of that and trying to provide first aid. We never know when we're going to be called upon to care for somebody else. What we know can save a life. I have a granddaughter who has dwarfism, who's going to need Medicaid help because that disease is difficult. But it's going to take a lot of caregivers to make her get through. And then we have the other aspect in Wyoming of the suicide rates among law enforcement, among teachers, among all of our community. And we have to be aware that we need to have mental health care and support from each other, whether it's through drug court programs, substance abuse treatment programs. We could at least get a treatment center in Wyoming, perhaps. There isn't one right now that can really do the job of long-term treatment to care for folks. We needed to do that.
Well, I want to thank the candidates for answering these wide variety of questions. And again, look at the 411 voter guide to see what they said to some others. I will turn this back over to our league host. Come on up, Matt.
Thank you to our lovely moderator tonight and the library for hosting us, and especially Rachel Crocker over there, who is doing all the tech support tonight, even though it's not part of the librarian purview. Just a few concluding remarks here. I want to remind people that we have an electronic version of our regular voter guide now. It's called Vote 411. vote411.org, and you can go to that website, put in your street address, and figure out exactly who you're allowed to vote for and whatever answers they've provided to some of our candidate questions. And importantly, I want to remind any candidates here tonight, either on our panel or in our audience or watching this video here, you have until 1 p.m. tomorrow to answer any of our remaining queries about candidate questions to ensure that we have enough time to get your responses in the printed version of the voter guide. So if you haven't replied yet, please respond to our queries. We only have a few stragglers left. Okay, next week, everyone, we're going to be taking a break from local elections for some statewide politics. Here at the library again, in the same room, at 7 p.m., we're going to have a forum for the Wyoming Secretary of State race. And then at 8 p.m., we'll have a forum for the Wyoming State Treasurer race. So please come and see the fireworks next week. Now I want to invite our audience to converse with our candidates up here as we put things away. Thanks for coming, everyone, and have a nice evening.
But you did a good job. Great job. No, that's a great answer.
How to answer something I don't know. I know.
Testing. Okay. Can I get your